Thank you to Wildlife and Countryside Link for the invitation and to everyone involved in ORFC. I am truly sorry not to be with you in person. As you know, it turns out that I need to be in the Commons for debate on the Withdrawal Agreement Bill, which is currently being rammed through Parliament at breakneck speed. As well as voting, I'm tabling and supporting amendments to address the lack of scrutiny and democracy on future trade deals, to prevent regression from current EU standards on food, environment and health, for example. Now, we're less than a month after an election campaign that saw an onslaught of misleading statements and a dramatic slide towards post-truth politics and public debate. And it's in this context that we're debating the Withdrawal Agreement Bill and that we await the Agriculture, Trade and Environment Bills. And we're less than a month before the UK formally leaves the EU, even if nobody actually believes that Brexit will be done at that point. Climate inaction is already one of the biggest casualties of Brexit, and we have a protracted and perilous process ahead. So that's the context in which I'd like to share some thoughts on my top 3 policy priorities related to what the climate emergency really means for food and farming. Conversations and collaboration between food producers, politicians and policymakers are more important than ever. Your expertise and experience and your inspiration is invaluable. So on net zero, my starting point is that the UK should get there by 2030. 2050 is in line with neither science nor equity. But targets don't cut carbon, of course, policies do. Getting ambitious policies in place that lead to real change starting right now is the top priority. Climate delay is almost as bad as climate denial. As Bill McKibben says, winning slowly is the same as losing. So I'd argue that we need an overarching Green New Deal for food and farming, designed to deliver a 10-year transition to agroecology. That means incentives, regulation and funding all being designed to help farmers work with nature, not against it. It means government aiming explicitly for every single farm to be involved in the great agroecological transition. And as part of that, there are 3 priorities that I particularly pick out. First, policies to maximise carbon storage in healthy living soils. The new farm payment system must incentivise, enable and ultimately require farming and land management that maximises carbon storage. Tree planting gets the most media and political attention, but to that though, I would add hedgerows, natural regeneration and the mainstream adoption of agroforestry. As The Guardian recently reported, UK peatlands store far more carbon than UK forests, 5.5 billion tonnes compared with just 150 million. Net zero demands just as much action on soil as on trees, and that includes agricultural soils as well as peatlands and wetland too. Now, any serious minister who really wants to address soil carbon wouldn't ignore the problematic role of agrochemicals, pesticides, herbicides and fungicides as well. If you accept the need for healthy living soils for carbon storage, biodiversity and fertility, surely you design your policies to minimise inputs that exterminate that precious biological life. Second, policies for less but better meat and dairy. We can't just pretend that the IPCC call for rapid, far-reaching and unprecedented change in all sectors somehow means business as usual for the livestock sector. So we must make less but better meat a pro-farmer and pro-farming proposition. We all have a responsibility to shift the debate away from polarisation and division, and it's incredibly encouraging to see farming organisations within the Eating Better coalition advocating for a 50% reduction in meat and dairy consumption in the UK by 2030. Now, public procurement is rightly highlighted as one policy that should be relatively quick and easy to win. So today I've written to the House of Commons catering services, asking them to adopt the relevant recommendations of the Eating Better roadmap. And it's really disappointing that they recently dropped out of the Food for Life bronze scheme at precisely the point when Parliament had declared a climate and nature emergency. Now, a lot of good work on sustainable sourcing has been done, but now is the time to ramp that up. And so I'm very hopeful that the response will be positive. The public sector can and should be leading the way on climate and nature-friendly diets, demonstrating how such diets support British farming and contribute proactively to that great agroecological transition. And third, finally, policies to measure what really matters, in today's new age of climate emergency. The importance of rewriting the economic rulebook and adopting new metrics of success simply cannot be overstated, and that applies both to the economy as a whole and the food and farming sector. The UN's global assessment of nature last year should be a wake-up call for those still fantasising that pursuing infinite economic growth on a finite planet is somehow compatible with tackling the climate or biodiversity crises. It states unambiguously that we must steer, and I quote, away from the current limited paradigm of economic growth and shift beyond standard economic indicators such as gross domestic product. So that means, at a national level, we must urgently move away from consumption and GDP as measures of economic success, towards indicators that measure ecological health and human well-being instead. So my question to you is, what does that shift look like applied to the food and farming system? What if we design new farm policy to deliver value, not volume, diversity, not commodities, people nourished per hectare, not just tons of yield? Now, you are much better placed than I am to decide what those metrics should be, but it is vital that we get them right. And so, in conclusion, I want to emphasise what a crucial role you all play, particularly with your leadership by example. And you know, we can hold ministers to account on manifesto pledges on farming and climate, not least when it comes to trade deals. And we can push the government to go further. A 10-year transition to agroecology is what we need, so that is what we must demand. Now, many of you have Conservative MPs, and your influence as constituents, as well as campaigners, can't be overstated. So please, make the very most of this opportunity, and I really look forward to working with many of you over the coming months. Thank you.